request Dr. Shivani Sharma to present her.
Good evening to everyone, respected chairperson, scholars from parts of the world and dear friends. The title that I have selected to speak upon is Sattva to Sahradayta, Sattva to Sahradayta, uncovering holistic foundations of aesthetic experience. Before I start reading my paper, let me just submit it that there is a presumption behind the title or the topic of my paper, and the presumption is this, that in aesthetic experience we do get some holistic elements or some elements which can be called or termed as holistic in nature, and they do help us to live holistically, and these elements are none other than but Sattva and Sahradayta. Sattva is the cause that enables humans to become Sahraday. That is the fundamental assumption that works underneath entire paper. So in order to save time, I'll read it. It is generally believed that a holistic life is one that takes an account of human life in totality, and in doing so it considers every little detail of cosmos as nothing but an extension of oneself. Needless to say that the bond is one of reciprocation. The self is too an extended part of the whole reality. This reality may be visualized at different stages. At a cosmic level, it is recognized by the Vedas as Rita. Humans, being the only language using species, regards linguistic extension of Rita, the cosmic order, as Satya. Moral extension of Rita is visualized in action that is loaded not only with recurring fruits and consequences, but defines man in terms of a virtuous being who believes in performing acts for Lokasangraha. Rit as a moral principle predominating man's realm of moral and ethical conduct in the form of dharma. Rita's interpretation as Satya and Dharma is well known, but through this paper I intend to propose that Rita has another dimension which is aesthetic in its nature and has an appeal to man's sensibilities. It is known as rasa. As a presumption, I assume that Rita is primarily indicative of unified, composed and holistic life. Humans not only feel as extension of a cosmic plan, but feel connected to each other as equal coexistent realities. The process through which they recognize others' existence and find them equally meaningful cannot see the light of the day unless they choose to be Sahraday. This Sahradayta has its roots in the Sattva. The aim of the paper is to highlight the interlinkages between Sattva and Sahradayta and establish that the latter is an outcome of the former. It is to be treated as an outcome of Sattva, that is an element of luminosity. Unless Sattva is active in a person, Sahradayta cannot surface. The aim is also to highlight the significance of the concept of Sahradayta as a constitutive force and an enabling mode to feel and realize oneself in others and others in oneself. The paper shall unfold the concepts of Sattva and Sahradayta by taking up aesthetic and moral dimensions and further try to explore as to how it helps us to generate a holistic life. Introduction. Aesthetic experience in Indian context has always been much more than visualizing only beauty. It rather represents a comprehensive understanding of the human mind when at rest, ease and peace. So, Saundarya is only one of the constituents of human experience that finally helps leading and converting it into an aesthetic one. Acceptance of 8 bhavas or sthai bhavas by Bharat Muni sufficiently proves that humans seek more than mundane and beautiful. It is the state of being free or being liberated a spectator evolves through that makes him realize that aesthetic experience is essentially related to reception of something by him in the purest, lightest and brightest state of mind. To such a state of mind, the tradition claims to be Sattva, and the joyful experience one draws in an art performance is because the mind is enveloped by the Sattva and thus oozes out with luminosity and positive receptivity. It is usually held that aesthetic experience, or if technically called rasanubhav, is generated because of the principle of Sattva existing in us. Presence of Sattva leads to the experience that is aesthetic in nature. Keeping this in mind, one can start by asking as to what is the differentiating criteria for marking some experience as aesthetic and others as non-aesthetic in nature. The fundamental of such a categorization seems plausible when we find that art and its creations or products are rooted in imagination and creativity, whereas disciplines like natural sciences and social sciences, though rest their focus on inquiry into the nature of truth, yet becomes descriptive in its methodology, procedure and outcome. Whereas in the pursuit of art, one can find that the artist begins without being fully aware of what he wants to bring into existence. He has only a faint vision of his thought or feeling that he would actually like to express, but he remains unaware of the process he would go through in actually creating his artwork. He has no fixed rules and methodology by which he can recreate his same work again in his same lifetime. One can say that rules, methodology and regular procedural way is not the way of art. Learning art in this sense remains as an educational or formal training for an artist, but so far creating an artwork is concerned, an artist transcends the rules or sometimes even bypass the given set of norms and paradigms of creativity. In order to reflect as to what is the role of element of Sattva in experiencing aesthetically demands us to attend to the following questions. First, what is meant by Sattva in the context of art, that is poetics or dramatics? Can Sattva be interpreted as an amoral concept in the world of art? How does Bhagavad Gita interprets the Sattva and how it gets further connected to the state of spectator reciprocating to the work of art? Why at all it is necessary to presume Rasanubhav to be grounded in Sattvodrek? Sattva as the principle of luminosity becomes the carrier and bearer of meaningful experience that is aesthetic in nature. What does it mean to presume Sattva as a holistic principle? Is Sattva representative of a mental state that enables humans to be Sahradayta? How far Sankhya's definition of Sattva should be acceptable in the present context? Why Sattva is more compatible in generating aesthetic experience than Rajas and Tamas? What are the features of Sattva when it comes to receptivity and catharsis? Experience in general refers to a sense object, contact, and in this sense, aesthetic experience certainly is a gross and mundane phenomena or event that occurs just like any other experience at the start. The content of aesthetic experience is constituted by the joy one relishes during or even after the presentation of an artwork or performance. This joy emerges and gets evolved because of the unification or identification of the spectator or the Sahradayta with the object or of art or art presentation. This identification in the Natya tradition has been called as Sadharanikaran or the process of de-individuation. In order to focus on the set of questions mentioned above, the traditional philosophical view is that Sattva being one of the gunas, besides Rajas and Tamas, of Prakriti is the source of the states of brightness and lightness of our mind. It is because of the gunas of Prakriti, of Sankhya, one is able to be a recipient of the experiences of life in different shades. But Sattva in the present context surpasses its Sankhya's interpretation and reaches the yogic plane of experience that is more inexpressible in nature. Inexpressibility of and in aesthetic experience is though a fundamental feature, yet it does not stand to mean that its communication is total impossibility. Similar feelings at the reception of a dramatic or a poetic form of art, when generated among spectators, readers or Sahradayas, indicate the unsaid uniqueness of the individual's experience along with the universalistic element embedded in it. This universality is a source of common experience of humanity and thus strengthens the idea of shareability and communicability of aesthetic experience. Sattva in a philosophical background, though appears in different shades, yet conveys a single and unified meaning, a principle of luminosity. The paper attempts to explore the concept of Sattva in 4 possible shades, and finally concluding their merger into aesthetic experience. Sattva first, Sattva as bhav, the source of rasa. The verse Satvodreka, the Khanda Swaprakasha Ananda Chinmaya, Vedyantara Sparsha Shunyo, Brahma Swada Sahodara, it is a much deliberated verse by the Indian tradition with reference to the nature of rasa, and its experience clearly establishes that rasa springs from Sattva. Though rasanubhav and aesthetic experience are terms from different backgrounds and do not convey the same meaning as one another, yet keeping the wider connotations of the term in view, I intend to patch them up as one and in the present context. Be it rasanubhav or aesthetic experience, both presume the Sattva as a prerequisite and as an excess to the same. It is assumed that unless and until the mind is still and at peace and has not been universalized with the theme or an idea being enacted by the actor on the stage, the spectator is not able to relish the ultimate outcome of the presentation. Number of conditions are laid down in the Natya Shastra for the spectator willing to undergo rasanubhav. I am skipping few of the points. The foundation of the concept of Sattva in Indian poetics becomes more vibrant and radiant if the following verse is taken under consideration. Chitre niveshya parikalpitah sattva yogat rupo chayan manasa vidhina. This is from Abhigyan Shakuntal, and the meaning is that Shakuntala is said to be composed by the mind of the creator in such a way that her main constituent is Sattva. Now, Saundarya, inner and outer, according to the Indian dramatics or poetics, approaches a proximity to the concept of Sattva, and probably it is for this reason that Shringar has a predominance of the qualities of Sattva as evident in the following verse. Asmin loke yad kinchit shuchihi medhyam ujvalam va tat sarvam shringo, that is, whatsoever in this world that is pure, pious, excellent and bright is symbolic of Shringar. The debate if aesthetic experience must have a moral content has led the aestheticians in general and Indian poets in particular to accept it as a presumption. Especially, Indian dramaturgy accepts that the aim of Natya cannot be but a moral one. Formation of categories and characterizing the kinds of heroes as Dhiro Datta, Dhiro Dhatta, Dhira Lalit and Dhira Prashant indicate that immoral pleasure remains avoidable area. But the joy an artwork in general and drama in particular generates is not only a pleasure that is sensual in nature, rather it transcends the limits of the mundane and the phenomenal. Next is Sattva as Bala and Vritti. It has been interpreted Sattva as Bala and Vritti. Another shade of Sattva that is prevalent is Bala. Certainly, strength in physical dimension is not what is intended here. Bala stands for the morally correct attitude. It represents the inner strength or the determination on the part of the character. On the whole, in the Natya Shastra, when the word Sattva is used, its exact meaning is never clear. The unusual meaning is strength, power. Sattvic Abhinay is translated as impressive, powerful Abhinay. Adya Rangacharya, I have quoted him. Sattva as Bal becomes more explicit when we find it easy to unify and identify ourselves with the pain Rama as a husband goes through for his wife being abducted by Ravan. The krodh of Rama, the anger of Rama against Ravan bears greater bala and sattva than Ravana's krodh for insulting his sister Shrupnakha. I'm skipping. In fact, Bharat in his Natya Shastra depicts two kinds of siddhis or the success of the drama that arises as a result from acting, emotion and gestures depending on the various rasas and bhavas. Okay, I am skipping this also. Another interpretation of the term Sattva that is available in Natya Shastra is Vritti, that evolves from a mythological background. Etymologically, the root Vritti is Vrit, meaning thereby to behave. Behavior is to be understood on the basis of emotions and sentiments through their expression in the form of words, language and gestures. The different movements employed by Vishnu in order to tackle the two asuras, that is Madhu and Kaitab, Brahma adopted them as the origin of Vritti and accorded meaning to each movement. Bharati Vritti refers to Bhara, the burden of the footsteps of Vishnu taken to kill the demons in mythological context, and the linguistic usage in a dramatic presentation. Kaishiki Vritti refers to the way of Vishnu. Vishnu tied his hair, and in drama it stands for a colorful and charming costumes, mostly of the women. Arabhatta Vritti refers to the Vishnu's enragement, Samarambha, excitement, Aveg, Sarang, the bow of Vishnu while aiming at the two asuras steadily, etc. And lastly, Sattva as a state of harmony and balance. The Chitta has different stages, Kshipt or mood, or the infatuated Vikshipt, the distracted Ekagra, Niruddha are the stages. In order to define as to what state it would be of Sahradaya during aesthetic experience, it can be said that out of the first two stages, as suggested by the yoga system, cannot be called as the proper yogic stages of the Chitta, as the mind here is not fully concentrated, but the state which, when the mind is single in intent, fully illumines a distinct and real object and causes the hindrance to dwindle, slackens the bond of karma and sets before it as a goal the restriction of all the fluctuations is called a yoga, in which there is consciousness of an object. Now, if Sattva is taken as psychological concept, then in relation to aesthetic experience, following points emerge. The state of mind in experiencing aesthetically firstly presumes a state of forgetfulness on the part of the Sahradaya about himself as an individual. Secondly, his identification with the character, which further leads him to such an unflickering thought process that he almost assumes himself to be the same as the character. Thirdly, his emotional setup moves in accordance with that of the character that finally culminates into Anand or happiness. Sattva in this way becomes a source of Anand and Sukh. The art object is illuminated in an art experience because of the buoyancy being provided by the principle of Sattva to the mind. Entire physicality, I'm done. Entire physicality enters into the stream of unstinting and unperturbed mental pleasure that has led the Indian tradition to equate Rasanubhav as Sahodar or sibling of Brahmanan. By the way of conclusion, it can be said that being Sattvic in every sense of the term stands for an attitude that is of a Sakshi, Drashta or an observer, and an agent who is free from attachment, non-egoist, infused with fortitude and enthusiasm and unaffected in success or failure is called Sattvic. It would not be an exaggeration to say that aesthetic experience at an advanced stage is no less than a yogic state of mind, whereby the mind of a spectator is beyond the limits of his individuality and identity, a state that shines because of being identified with what one is not, a state that helps to have a feel as to what liberation or muktavastha could be, a state whereby luminosity of Sattva in itself becomes the sole criteria of the experience, and the spectator, having transcended the worldly bonds, stays in the unification of himself and his only experience. Sattva therefore becomes surely an element of luminosity, not only of aesthetic experience but of entire human life. Thank you.